Welcome back, America. Douglas Murray. You know, in our country, I talk about, and it's not just here, this fusion of Marxism and Islamism. Not that they have the same absolute belief system, but the means, which is to destroy the West, to destroy the United States, Britain, Israel, so forth and so on, all of Europe. And they've destroyed many of our institutions. So now patriotism, whether it's British patriotism in Britain or American patriotism, is under attack, if not a dead letter, in so many of these institutions that used to require the assimilation of these people into our country, into your country. Is that a big problem in Britain, too?
It's the same problem everywhere in the West, Mark. Our societies, broadly speaking, decided that if the world was going to move into our countries, we had to be as welcoming as possible. And one of the ways we did that was not emphasizing what makes our countries good in the first place. I said in The Strange Death of Europe 10 years ago, everything you can tell about the virtue of a country, you can tell by the direction of the footfall. Why is it, even today, that the countries in the world which people want to break into are America, the United States of America, Canada, Britain, France, Australia? It's because these countries work. It's because our countries work. It's because we have economics that work. We have a system of capitalism that works. We have home ownership. We have liberties, rights. We have institutions that have survived the test of time. And so people want to come into these places and to use that. But at the same time they do that, we have all these leftist institutions, and I have to say it's very often the church, the NGOs, the schools, the universities, and much more. And they say, actually, no, the country you've come into, we're terrible. We have nothing going for us. I described this in my 2022 book, The War on the West. Look at the assault on all of our founders, and not just in America, but across the West. Look at the assault on our heroes. Look at the way in which the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, is presented simply as a slave owner. What else did school children get taught about Mr. Jefferson? Not very much. Look at the assault on Winston Churchill in recent years. Used to be from the radical Marxist and Islamist left, now from, weirdly, bits of the kooky right as well. But look at the way in which our holy places, Mark, our holy places as societies, and I mean that in terms of monuments, in terms of institutions, but also individuals who we revere, who we looked up to. All of these have been trashed in recent years. And the perversity of that, among other things, is why would somebody even want to integrate into a culture which tells them that the culture is rotten? Why would they? It would be nonsensical.
This emigration from many of these Arab countries, North African countries, mostly Muslim countries into the West, some of it is spontaneous, but some of it's not. The Islamist scholars of the past have talked about revolution by immigration, and I see a lot of that taking place too. That is, the easiest way to conquer the West is to conquer the West from within. And I think the West has demonstrated, at least right now, that it's very weak and it doesn't understand the mindset of the Islamists, no?
We'll take the most obvious one, Mark. After 9/11, why is it that in America and every Western European country and Canada and so on, Muslim migration ramped up historically? After 9/11, after the first major taste the West had of what Islamic fundamentalism means, okay, a minority proportion of Muslim communities around the world support that. But even if it's 5%, 10%, 15% support that, you would have thought that you would not ramp up Muslim migration. But that's exactly what the West has done for the last quarter of a century. It makes no sense because we were already grappling with domestic homegrown threats 25 years ago. We were already grappling with that. So why is it we're in the situation today where, for instance, 3/4 of British Muslims believe that Hamas didn't carry out any atrocities on October the 7th? How did we get here? Madness.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.